So I just flew in from Portland and my arms are tired, so I'm going to do my best here. To complete Flannery O'Connor's Violent Bear It Away, we're going to talk today about parts 2 and 3. Now let's just summarize, first of all, what I believe happens in part 1 of the book. I tried to argue that part 1 showed that the book was a battle over the soul of Tarwater. It's a battle between Rayber, the modern nihilist, and old man Tarwater, the old-time believer. In this battle, Rayber has the advantage of being alive. But old man Tarwater has the advantage of having educated Tarwater. As I say, Rayber stands for modern nihilism, about which more in a second. And old man Tarwater stands for the old-time religion. What is modern nihilism? Well, there are several attributes of it in the novel, and I think what we get in part 1 is something like this. Rayber stands for the proposition that he owns himself and can make himself. In whatever way, shape, or form he chooses. Old man Tarwater stands for man being made in the image of God and God owning you, God making you. And these seem to be the two options. As the stranger says to Tarwater, it's Jesus or you. Now, last time we talked about Rayber and old man Tarwater quite a bit. And today I want us to focus a little more on Tarwater himself. No doubt some of the reason that people find the book unattractive and dark is that Tarwater is the hero of the book. He's not particularly savory. He's not really a talker. He doesn't even seem to be particularly faithful. While I don't want to make a dogmatic statement on this, generally, people who drown children in books are not heroes. And I don't mean to judge or be moralistic when I say this. And hopefully the diversity committee will not come after me for saying that drowning children is generally a sign of evil. So he's not a particularly savory character, but I do believe, nevertheless, that he's the hero of the book. And I just want you to know that O'Connor knows that he's not savory, right? He names him Tarwater, the dark water. He's hungry in parts of part 2, but incommunicative. That is, he doesn't talk about what he hungers for. We later on find that it's bread. Throughout the novel, Tarwater is plagued by his friend, his mentor, the stranger, who is always tempting him away from the role that his uncle had prepared him for, that is, from being a prophet. Right, so there's many things about him, and I already mentioned at the denouement of part 2, he drowns Bishop. All of these things really suggest that this guy's not a hero, even though he's the protagonist. He's more like the stranger, that is the head character in Camus' book, The Stranger, an ugly protagonist. But nevertheless, I think in part 3, Tarwater changes, or he appears to change. Once again, I'm trying to stay at this at a level of abstraction here, what goes on in the text. He appears to change in part 3. He is sodomized by the friend. He's raped by the stranger. He then returns home to Powderhead, to the valley of Powderhead, receives a vision of the Lord, and turns toward his destiny of being a prophet. And at the novel's end, he leaves the country altogether and moves toward the city, where he will take on the cross that his uncle has put on him, and I think that the Lord has put on him, and spread the word about God's mercy and judgment. That as Tarwater turns, he accepts his calling at the end of the novel. And that's the important thing. Now, Tarwater has been struggling with this destiny throughout his life, and certainly throughout the novel. He questions whether or not he actually has a calling to be a prophet. And he seems to be, in part 3, he seems to be returning to Powderhead infused with Raebur's ideas. He says to himself, although this is not his final word on this, that the baptism of Bishop was an accident and the killing was the reality. He says on his way back to Powderhead that one cannot be born again. He parrots all the lines after the sodomy, after the rape. He parrots all the lines that Raeburn has been feeding him during his days with Raeburn. Yet upon coming back to Powderhead, if you want to think of it like this, his education holds. The education that his uncle has given him holds. It reasserts itself. And he begins to look at things differently. The education that he had received from his uncle, this is discussed right at the beginning of the book, is what I would call anti-natural, anti-natural theological education that focuses on developing providential lenses through which to view the world. And I just want you to recognize what O'Connor is saying there, that these lenses allow you to see the world as it is. That is, they allow you to see the world correctly. This is Raeburn's vision. This is Old Man Tarwater's vision. That is, I can see things clearly now. And just to be as specific as I can about this, although I'm going to be more specific later, what does he see through these lenses? The origin of life as a gift, and the aim of life as belief, and giving glory to God. No matter what Raeburn does, the old-time religion reasserts itself in Tarwater. Oh, that'll be a good instant replay for later on. Thank you. So let's just say, so the book is a defense and really an account of Christian orthodoxy, but recognize what it's doing at the same time as giving an account of Christian orthodoxy. It's showing that it is not American. It's using the lens of Christian orthodoxy as the critique of progressive America. Christianity is not about being nice, it's about believing. And in a world that emphasizes being nice, it is not nice to ignore your neighbor's lack of faith. And this is O'Connor's point. Christians, Orthodox Christians in modern America should look odd, because modern America is profoundly nihilistic. Now, you may think she's wrong in her diagnosis, and that's certainly a point of view of modern America as profoundly nihilistic. You may think she gets Christianity wrong. That would be also another, I think, theoretically interesting line of attack against O'Connor. But I think this is what she's up to in the book. Okay, so let's look at part two, some episodes in part two, and discuss what I think they mean. So first of all, there are several episodes in part two around the topic of baptism. There's a moment when Tarwater is kind of impelled, has an inner impulsion to baptize the child at a fountain. But doesn't. We hear that there was a moment earlier in his life when Raber wanted to drown Bishop, and in fact had done some rather, had gone through extraordinary lengths to make up a genuine and airtight alibi for if he had successfully drowned his son, but he doesn't follow through. And then at the end of part two, we know that the baptism is finally successful, although it does, lead to the child's death. That is, he's both killed and baptized. So now let's talk about baptism first, and then go through some of these episodes, if that's all right. What is baptism? All right. Well, O'Connor has a view on this. All right. And it is not the mere sprinkling of water on someone. It is a genuine moment when God's grace comes to a human being. So think of it like this. It's something that is a bit beyond your control as a human being. Do any of you choose to be born? No. Well, if you don't choose to be born, it might make some sense to say that you don't choose to be born again. That is, it's something done to you. And baptism, I believe in the book, stands for faith. And I think that's not an unorthodox position on the question. What else happens at baptism? Well, baptism is done with water, and there's a certain symbolism in it. Part of you is killed in baptism. And here I'm just going to rely on my own theological training to use some words that hopefully will make some sense. But part of you is drowned. The old Adam part of you is drowned. Your sinful nature is drowned in baptism. It's killed. And the part of you that lives is the part that receives and hungers for God's grace, that is, for redemption. I'm trying to keep this as non-denominational as I can. So baptism kills. And is the death violent? Yes. Can you see it? No. That is, it's part of the unseen world, where the old Adam, the sinful part of you, is killed. So baptism is crucial. It's not a mere symbol. It's crucial. There is even some, I'll call it, biblical evidence for this position. He that believes and is baptized shall be saved. Precisely what that means is an object of some dispute. You believe first and then you get baptized. I don't know that that's what's said. That's how it's often interpreted. Regardless. So what is baptism? Baptism is an act of love. That is, if you genuinely love someone, care for the eternal destiny of their soul, you will be concerned that they be baptized. Doesn't this sound like a freak show? In a certain way, it sounds like a total freak show. Because, and let's talk about the way in which this looks like a total freak show. There's no evidence that that's true. How can you measure salvation? How can you measure the effectiveness of baptism? And it's especially freak showsville when you look at it like this. You own yourself, and you save yourself. How could baptism possibly save you from the perspective of modern nihilism? So this is certainly Raber's view. Baptism is an empty rite. That's R-I-T-E. Empty rite. An old tradition. A symbol of love, perhaps, but also a symbol of superstition and a symbol of man rejecting the truth. So on this issue of baptism, which is why I'm bringing it up here, O'Connor is trying to show the incompatibility of the Christian view and the American view. There is a branch of, I'll say, American political tradition that says that the church and the state can get along as long as they're separate. And a population taken with ideas of a population will get its ideas of morality from the religion it embraces. A free people can only continue to exist, so this statement goes, or so this line of argument goes. A free people can only continue to exist if it's a moral people. So, free people requires morality. Morality presupposes religion. So religion is of great public importance, according to this line of argument, which I think is not foreign to the American founding. But there is ultimately a compatibility between religious belief and being a free people. Right? In fact, one presupposes the other. That is not O'Connor's view. Right? This is a profound critique of the American regime. The American regime and its principles lead to nihilism, which has at least one great benefit. It clarifies everything for everyone. The American founding muddies the waters and tries to say something like, you can be a good man, a good citizen, that you can be a good American and a good Christian. Right? It tries to muddy the waters. O'Connor's position on that is that Christianity has been the loser in that muddying. It has been distorted and come to be something like civil religion. The only parts of Christianity that are emphasized are the parts that get you to be nice. No devil, no judgment, lots of love your neighbor. American Christianity leaves out all the hard stuff and makes it very soft. Christianity has been distorted by this American approach to religion. Raber stands for the idea that we can get beyond this old American approach to religion. That a free people may require morality, but it doesn't require religion to teach morality. Man gives laws to himself. And if man gives laws to himself, anything that would restrain man's will is actually immoral. That's the problem with Christianity from Raber's point of view. So I want you to recognize these are the two kind of American visions of America in O'Connor. A regime that accommodates religion and even presupposes it is the oldish view. A regime that is actively hostile to religion, that's the newish view, the modern nihilistic view. But they both share an attribute. They're non-Christian. They look at religion as either useful or not useful, but they never ask whether it's true. Am I making sense? In her books, in fact, her corpus explores the possibility, this is a very soft way of putting it, explores the possibility that there's a perspective out there that it's true, and uses that perspective to critique the American view. So I don't know how many of you have read other novels of hers, but they all have this dark quality. There's another novel, she uses the word good a lot in short stories and novels, and another one of her novels is called A Good Man is Hard to Find. Anyone ever read this? A Good Man is Hard to Find. In it, a very respectable, people who get dressed up to go drive on a family vacation, nice Sunday people, Sunday dress up kind of people. They get in a car, they hear that some guy has escaped from prison, and they pull over on the highway, and they're met by the misfit, the guy who has escaped from prison. And the grandma she's a good person and assumes that everyone around her is good. How could people be bad? The misfit's probably misunderstood. He doesn't fit in, he's a misfit. Slowly, the misfit takes the people out of her car, takes them into the woods, and blows them away. And you're left with, she keeps hearing gunshots. Well, what's that? What's that? What's that? She stays there. Finally, the misfit, has had about enough of being with grandma, and points the gun at her. And she has this moment where she recognizes genuine evil. It's like, oh, wait, you're not misunderstood. You're a bad guy. And she has a moment where she doesn't worry about respectability, but she actually worries about the family that she's going to miss. I mean, they're dead. And he blows her away. 3 shots in the chest. It's fantastic. And then I think the last words of the novel go something like this. Some people will become good if they have a gun to their head. Now, Grandma has been good her whole life. A respectable person, raised family, but she hasn't really been good. She's been good on the American view. Nice. But she hasn't recognized evil, and hence hasn't recognized the need for grace, which she does right before boom, boom, boom. I think if we had gun control, that wouldn't have happened. I think there should be a sequel to the book that entertains that possibility. There's a book, a short story called Good Country People, which is fantastic. It's a fantastic short story that goes something like this. I'm going to get some of the details wrong. It's been 15 years since I read it, but I'm pretty good. So you can test this against the book. It goes something like this. There's a girl. She lives in the country. She goes and studies philosophy in Germany with Martin Heidegger. She comes back to rural Georgia and lives with her good family, but she kind of has contempt for them because they don't know what she knows. She's looked into the abyss and seen nothing. And she has this one problem. She can't get a date, and the reason for this is that she has fake legs. She's been, she really is willing, or maybe it's only one fake leg, she's willing to absorb nihilistic philosophy because of the evil that has been done to her. That is, she's been born without a leg. So she has a prosthetic leg. And she wants to have one act that will make her feel genuinely that she lives in line with her own nihilism, that God is dead, and she can show it. She meets this traveling Bible salesman who comes to the door. No one has read this book? It's fantastic. Yeah, so let me know when I get it wrong. Meets this traveling Bible salesman who she says, I've discovered the evil act. I'm going to seduce this guy. And so the guy, and she starts to seduce him, and obviously, I mean, I don't know how this works when you have a prosthetic leg, but maybe that's not what every man's looking for. And that's all I'm saying about it. But nevertheless, he's seduced by her, and she really feels that this is the act, and she succeeds. She takes him back into the barn. They lay up in the hay loft. Is that what they have a roll in the hay? That's right, and she thinks she has triumphed and really corrupted this guy. But this guy is a complete fake. He likes to go around and horse around with people on the farms and go on haylofts. He's a transparently nihilistic traveling Bible salesman. And he looks at her and says, you thought you would see nothing, that is, you had looked into the abyss. I've looked into the abyss, and I recognize how to live a consistent life. He takes her prosthetic leg, leaves her up in the hayloft, and goes. So she's stuck. And it's like, you've seen nothing, I am nothing, is what is kind of the attitude the guy has, and that's how the thing ends. Look, she's a good country. She's a good country person. Right? So the point that she's always making is that American civil religion is good on the outside, but nothing on the inside. Right? And her approach is to show, and I could put that differently, American nihilism is nice on the outside, but nothing on the inside. I mean, both those things are nothing. She's trying to show what something is. She knows what something is. And she's criticizing the American perspective from the standpoint of someone who knows something. The things she looks at, the things she emphasizes are odd, especially from the perspective of American civil religion. But American civil religion isn't religious. That's the point. It's civil. Oh no, I went too far away from my computer. I went on a rampage there. So So baptism is a significant event. And seeing baptism as a significant event is an un-American action. Now, I think it's her view and we talked about this in one of the discussion groups. I think it's her view, and that was the one I was in. I haven't listened to the other one, and I apologize for that yet, but I think it's her view that every human being is made in the image of God. And what that means, as she portrays it in her fiction, is that every human being is capable of recognizing the beauty in the world, is capable of recognizing the beauty in other people's and the beauty in nature, to look at things without calculating about how they benefit you, to genuinely look at another human being and love him. And that human beings have to be educated away from this position. That the human beings made in the image of God can recognize the world as a gift and can love other human beings. Most of our education in this world leads us away from that position. You have to be taught to look out for yourself. Now, just recognize kind of what I'm saying there is that when you love a human being, you want to baptize them. Not you want to be nice to them. Like how you express love, that's kind of what we've been talking about up to this point. But that human being's love is part of our psychology. And she uses Raber, the modern American nihilist in the book, as the character through which she explores this idea. Human beings love, but they have to be educated away from it. And as I say, we talked about this in one of the sections, but let's look at page 113 and 114. The first paragraph on 113. His normal way of looking on Bishop was as an X, signifying the general hideousness of fate. That's the American view when you look at the imbecile. He did not believe that he himself was formed in the image of God and the likeness of God, but that Bishop was, he had no doubt. The little boy was part of a simple equation that required no further solution. That's the American view. Except at the moments when, with little or no warning, he would feel himself overwhelmed by this horrifying love. Anything he looked at too long could bring it on. Bishop did not have to be around. It could be a stick or a stone, a line of a shadow, the absurd old man's walk of a starling across the sidewalk. If, without thinking, he lent himself to it, he would feel suddenly a morbid surge of love that terrified him, powerful enough to throw him to the ground in an act of idiot praise. It was completely irrational and abnormal. Kind of people who cry in spring at the beauty of it. Right? He was not afraid of love in general. He wasn't anti-love, but here's how he understood it. He knew the value of it and how it could be used. Like, having my wife love me is very useful for me. I see the value of it. You get it? That's not loving her, but seeing the value of it. He had seen it transform in cases where nothing else had worked, such as with his poor sister. None of this had the least bearing on his situation. The love that would overcome him was of a different order entirely. So there's something beyond that. It was not the kind that could be used for a child's improvement or his own. It was love without reason, love for something futureless, love that appeared to exist only to be itself, imperious and all-demanding, the kind that would cause him to make a fool of himself in an instant. And it only began with Bishop. It began with Bishop, and then like an avalanche covered everything his reason hated. It always felt with a rush of longing to have the old man's eyes, insane, fish-colored, violent with their impossible vision of a world transfigured, turned on him once again. The longing was like an undertow in his blood, dragging him backwards to what he knew to be madness. The affliction was in the family. Now, I don't know if that's the Tarwaters or the human family. It lay hidden in the line of blood that touched him, flowing from some ancient source, some desert prophet or pole sitter, until its power unabated, it appeared in the old man and in him, and he surmised in the boy. Those it touched were condemned to fight it constantly or be ruled by it. The old man had been ruled by it. He, at the cost of a full life, staved it off. What the boy would do hung in the balance. He had kept it from gaining control over him by what amounted to a rigid aesthetic discipline. He did not look at anything too long. He denied his senses unnecessary satisfactions, and so on. So this is part of him. But he recognizes it as not American. So we could say that there's like levels of love. There's someone who can live without love. Then there's the American form of love, which recognizes its utility. I think Meeks is the character in the book that puts it best when he says, love is the policy that works best 95% of the time. It's good to remember people's names when you're a traveling salesman, because that'll help you sell more things. It's good to say, how's your wife? Well, my wife has cancer. Well, I write that down in a little book. And then when I hear she dies, I say, good, one less name to remember.